Hi, welcome to Healing Humanity. My name is Dina, and I want to talk to those that have been following me for quite some time. I want to get down to the brass tacks. What does that mean? That's an old business term that means basically I want to get to the bottom of things. I want to focus on the essentials of the problem, the fundamental details of the situation. Okay? So, for this talk that I'm going to give to you right now, I really need you to keep an open mind. Now, why is that? Because I'm going to say some things that, number one, you don't hear about very often. Number two is quite controversial. Number three, some people are not going to like what I'm saying. But I'm going to say it anyway because it has to be said. So, when I don't even know where to begin. So, when I started my journey along this path many years ago, um, one of the things that I realized is that I could not determine exactly where women fit in to God's world. I really couldn't. And I was so frustrated. I was so angry because everything that I looked at was, to me, in the beginning, negative. You know, I was told to look at, um, certain women in the Bible, and I tended to walk away from those stories saying, okay, well, she was manipulative, she was not honest, she was controlling and a, a prostitute, supposedly, and just so many different stories. But when you really dug deep into who they were and why, where they were going with things and their train of thought, I thought, well, this is very manipulative. This does not seem like a good space to be in. So I said, okay, well, how can you be a good person and be a woman in God's kingdom? So I said, okay, well, I need to look at my life, right? I have been a sinner, definitely not perfect, but I also knew I didn't do half the things that a lot of the guys I knew did. Not even close. But they made it. They're in God's kingdom. They've been accepted, taught all of the things that they need to be taught. So where do women fit in? How does that happen? Come to find out, over a long search and not taking silence as an answer, I finally found the answers that I was looking for. So women can fit in as long as they are controlled. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, men about 10 years ago, and I've spoke on this before. About 10 years ago, a group of men learned about, and probably a few women, maybe the men are not quite aware of, but a group of men learned about what has been happening behind the scenes. Globally, probably, but definitely within the United States. And they found out that the older generation that they are now taking over for created a system that they were able to benefit from by spiritually covering a woman's head with their energy. Now, that's a little woohoo, right? I didn't know how to process this in the beginning. But basically, they're able to cover a woman's head, probably men too, but definitely they have targeted for many, many generations, probably maybe 1,000 years or so, maybe more, they have been able to devise a plan and have put that plan into place where they are able to cover you. Now, it used to be that that covering only occurred during marriage or because of a marriage. Now, this new generation has learned that they're able to do this. Now, it is witchcraft. They're able to do this, and they're able to do it to whomever they like. It's a little like spiritual rape. No, it's a lot like spiritual rape. How do I know? Because that's what's been happening for a long time. This is part of the new covenant relationship that Jesus brought upon the earth. However, what Jesus did not intend was for men to overpower women. Men were not supposed to take women's blessings. They were not supposed to cover them from their ability to connect with the God source. Because there is a God source. There is a source higher than all of us. But certain men have decided that it's important to quiet the women, per se, and not allow them to connect directly to God because they didn't like how boisterous they were. They didn't like the direct connection. They wanted to control the narratives, and they wanted the blessings from their wives' spiritual connections. If they can cover, then they get the blessings in their lives. It's extremely oppressive, and it needs to stop. I'm not gonna pull any punches with you. This particular ordeal has me fuming. And I have tried to keep my temper for a really long time, and I am, but I think women and men need to understand that the only way for us to move forward as a nation, as a species, is for us to come together. We can no longer keep this split. You know, for at least 6 years, I have watched as the powers that be, the ones that were in power, and we're now taking that power over, the ones that were in power have brought up abortion again, have brought up what is a woman. That's the narrative. What is a woman? And you know, putting out these fake narratives, replacing women with transvestites and having them speak about how they are a woman. All of these things have a greater purpose. That purpose is to eventually have only a certain controlled society, right? So 10 years ago, men were guided to quickly marry up the woman that you choose. You choose the woman that you want to be with, and that's it. You stay with her, and the rest will be under judgment if they are not chosen. And that happened to me. Had quite a few people stop by, you know, to see who I was, how I was doing, people I may have been dating in the past, and was not chosen. Thing is I wouldn't have chosen them either. And so that left me as one of the ones that were under judgment. But what people didn't realize, and what the group didn't realize, is that I had already awoken way back when, many years ago. And what bothers me is that I survived all of the hell that I was put through. I was dropped into hell and left on my own to fight and claw my way out of that. Constant concern about my life, constant concern about what might happen, and trying so desperately to do something different, and just being blocked and sideswiped every step of the way. There was no winning. There just wasn't. No matter how hard I tried, I worked, 14, 15 hours a day for years with nothing to show for it. And in fact, life was drastically worse than what it had been. Why is that? Not for lack of my effort, I can tell you that. It's because man decided that whoever might be under judgment, if they have some form of benefit, that they would maybe put an insurance policy out on them, or somehow win favor by destroying the person's life. I suppose if I took my life, then they would, gain somehow. That's not going to happen. Because the larger scale of all of this, by targeting women over the last at least 6 years, drastic targeting, by pitting women against women, by pitting children against their family members, family against family. It just breeds and stinks of so much arrogance. And it definitely needs to stop. These systems are absolutely self-serving by these groups of men. But what they don't realize is that eventually, over time, what's going to happen is that these powers that had been, that think that they have the strong ability to control what happens in the future, and perhaps they do, or did. Their goal is to control who survives. So the women that were chosen in marriage, they survive. The women that deal with relationships such as prostitutes, potentially transvestites who are working girls, if you will, these folks, because they deal with sexual interactions as a monetary benefit, right? It's a business. It's not an emotional connection. They will allow them to survive, but all else perhaps might perish or eventually will be faded out. That's been the whole ordeal behind the scenes of all of this. And it really saddens me, because a lot of other women have gone through what I've gone through, and they have not survived. Come to find out. And how disgusting is that? How disgusting is that you think that you can play with God's design and to be able to change God's design, which is just bizarre to me, that you think that that's a possibility. I mean, I believe that that's a big part of why God woke me up the way that he did. I was not awoken by man. None of you gave me the benefit of God's light. God did. But he didn't do it directly. It wasn't just me and him. He did it through 4 women. Actually, 5 women total. 1 in one instance and 4 in another instance. Through women. For a woman. And I do believe that I have been kept in some form of hiding, undercover, if you will, for God for a really long time. And it seems that that's changing. And I just want to see that changes. I want to make sure that you understand that sometimes to go forward, we have to go back. Your database needs to be deleted, destroyed completely. Completely. You need to treat all women fairly and justly, especially those that are unable to care for themselves. or that are unmarried or widowed or poor. It is all through the Bible. It is the duty to take care of them as a Christian. But you have not been doing that. You have been making their lives absolutely disturbingly difficult for no reason. For, I suppose you have a reason: greed, extortion. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. You have to understand that your ego right now is so tremendously huge. Um, but it comes and it stems from an identity of fear and of lack. And how can that be if you're looking for money, if you're striving for money, if you are gaining spiritual benefit? It is because you think you can't do that on your own. You think you have the right and although you have the ability, you think you have the right to control women, and you don't at all. They never did have that right, which is why God's doing something new. He did something new with Jesus, and he's doing something new now with women. You are not going to replace God's design in this world. Not anymore. And you're not going to control it either. Women need to be able to connect with God themselves. In order for them to create, in order for them to be creative, in order for them to live a full life with joy and peace in their heart, they have to be able to connect to the source of God. All on their own. Without your guidance, without your instruction, without your covering. You know, the thing is that we've been under a patriarchal system, and you know this. It's no surprise, right? In that system, what I see is there are some good things about the system. I think of politics when I think of that. The ability to negotiate and the ability to perhaps control oneself and think strategically. I think that that's good. However, on the other side, we are destroying our earth, our oceans, our sky, our lands, our waters, all of them polluted, destroyed. We've allowed now, over the last 10 years, to release an enormous amount of our open lands, farmlands, to people that do not have our benefit in mind at all. They have replaced our food with seedless items, and I don't even find yellow beans in the store anymore, ever, at all. You know, the yellow snap beans, those aren't anywhere to be found anymore. So we've allowed these people to control the lands, control the seed collection, begin food manipulation. And now there's DNA destruction. There's childbirth manipulation. And I say that because right now in the Netherlands, there are scientists that have been able to extract a male and male gene, parts of their genes, and remove some of the DNA structures to be able to make a cell that will accept the sperm and be able to potentially be able to make a baby. Now, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. And there's there's laws that are being written in the Netherlands or in that general area to allow a man and a man or what have you, same-sex couples, to be able to procreate with together themselves. That is not God's design at all. And that should not be allowed. That is evil. They're already talking about machines making babies. They're talking, and like I said, the two men, it just floors me. The two men are creating potential embryos to be able to procreate together. And then there's also talk about humanoids and having them take over. And there was a doctor that I listened to, and I didn't get the whole story on the backstory on what she was talking about exactly, but she mentioned, the terribleness that's going on in the world and all the things that we're doing. But she mentioned the humanoids that they are creating or trying to create, and they're creating a certain light that is that awakens their heart. Well, the thing is that's not of God, and it's not going to net the outcome that they're hoping it will net. It's not going to be something that is pure, and it will not bring joy and love to the world. I mean, we just have to open our eyes. We really have to open our eyes to what is going on in this world and what you are being led to. There are people that are very strategic and very good at leading the narratives. And they have put this plan together so many years ago and have practiced and studied and understand psychology and understand how you will behave. The only way to overcome that is to stop it. Stop the coverings. Let women be free. Stop enslaving them. You want an equality in the relationship. You want somebody that is moral again. You want somebody that is not just looking for a free ride, or somebody that will take care of them. Well, those women are out there. I'm one of them. I didn't never wanted somebody to take care of me. I just wanted an equal partner. There are a lot of women that don't want a free ride, but it truly has become a lot of that because of the magnitude that you have suppressed women. You've left them no other options in some cases. Not in all, but in a lot of cases. It's time to change that. It's time to change the narrative. It's time to change the behavior. I hope you hear me. And I hope, some of this, if you don't know anything about what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. Connect with me. We'll have a conversation. But honestly, the suppression and the controlling behavior, it needs to end. It needs to end. 100%. If you're trying to keep somebody safe, that's one thing. But if you're connecting over them to control them, to understand them, to watch them, to gain their blessings, that's not God's design. Jesus walked with women, not above them.